delivering innovative security products and services to protect the information of consumers and small businesses. With over 20 years of product management, marketing, and finance experience related to software products and services, Carol has led marketing and product management teams at Keynote Systems, Enviz, Tumbleweed Communications, and Apple Computer. And when not traveling for work, Carol enjoys spending time with her family, including husband Phil and children Jessica and Matthew. I feel like I'm on like the dating game. Anyway, so what I'm going to do right now is I want to take 2 minutes, and I have our friend David Cuddy here who's actually going to literally jump up and stop you if you go beyond it. We're going to take 2 minutes to ask each of you the same question, and that is, why shouldn't we freak out? You want to start?
Sure. Well, if you look at the actual data, your child probably is at higher. How many of you have children in the audience, by the way? Or nephews and nieces, right? And how many of your kids or nephews or nieces are using the internet? Yeah, okay, lots. I have 2 children, 11 and 9, and they use the internet a lot unsupervised. We call it the one-eyed babysitter. Used to be the TV. Now it's my water spilling. Now it's the internet at our house. It's very addictive and engaging. And the reason I tell people not to freak out is when you look at the actual data about what happens. Thank you. We could fry the whole room here. Brown out. There are a few more napkins in the back. Thanks, David. Sorry about that. That when you actually look at the data about what's happening out there, about the statistics on cyberbullying, cyber texting, yes, it's increasing, but your child's more likely to be abducted walking home than they are for something bad to happen online. The real issue, I believe, and we talked about it earlier, I think my panelists will agree, really relate to the information they're being exposed to, as well as more of the reputation. What are they putting out there? How many of you have Googled your children recently? So I actually volunteer on a private school board. My kids don't go to private school, but I volunteer thinking maybe someday they'll go there. No, I volunteer because I wanted to help them out. And we look at applications for kids. And this is for a middle school. And we Google every child. And I wish I could tell you that we found nothing amiss. That our children have a digital footprint. And that is the area that I hope we'll have to spend some more time talking about. How do you manage a digital footprint in your family, for yourself, your spouse, your kids? Because that will live forever. That is what will follow them wherever they go. Some of the things we have found when we Google some of these applicants are inappropriate and surprising. Kids who look fantastic on paper, everything lines up, grades, captain of the soccer team, and then you see a picture and you think, I'm not sure this person's really who they say they are. That online reputation will live forever with them.
Perfect. 2 minutes, 15 seconds.
Sorry. I could go on forever about it.
So...
By the way, we're going to tie back to what Carol said because she made an interesting point, and you'll see why it's interesting from even what you think about generally when it comes to virus protection software, for example. Go ahead.
When I think about sort of the advice to why we shouldn't freak out, I spend a lot of time speaking with parents who are often surprised by a lot of the things that happen in technology, and they feel very overwhelmed. And one of the things that I bring up to them is, when you have your first child, you're probably not an expert in baby-proofing your home, but you learn that pretty quick. You may not be an expert in nutrition, but you learn that pretty quick. As they grow up, get into sports, things of that nature, you learn about safety of equipment, you learn about the rules of the game. Technology is really no different. There just happens to be a lot of it out there for your children to choose from. So our advice is typically along the lines of know what your children are interested and involved in and focus on understanding that technology. It's not necessary in a lot of cases to be across every single social networking site that's out there if your kid's only using MySpace or Facebook or something like that. So focus and engage with the child on what's important to them, and that's usually our guidance.
All right, that was less than a minute. I don't know how you did
Trying
that.
to
Let's give him a
trying
round
to
of
keep it on,
applause.
trying to keep it on track.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
Marian?
So reasons why not to freak out. I would say there's a lot of smart people paying very close attention to the concerns of what's happening to children on the internet. And the results of that analysis have actually helped us to debunk certain myths. For example, about the risk of online predation. As a result of the Berkman Center and studies such as that, we can move on from being very concerned about almost the mythological beast of online predation and focus on the real world issues, whether it be reputation or cyberbullying or malware. And the good news about the threats that I've just referred to, those three, is that parents have the tools to combat these issues, whether it be technology or, frankly, communication and engagement with your children. This is actually a problem you can address. I'm not sure you can make all of it go away entirely, but it is something that you have the capability to do something about. I still think that we have a number of concerns that need to be continually looked at. This is where government, educational industry, the nonprofits certainly have important roles to play, but I can't emphasize enough how important mom and dad are in their kids' lives.
Adam?
Well, my colleagues have done a wonderful job here, and I don't think I could say it any better than they have, but I will actually ask us to step back a long way back, like 100 years or so back, and ask ourselves why we shouldn't freak out, because compared to the past, kids are, relatively speaking, safer than ever before. I mean, if you think about child safety in a historical context, and this is my background, sort of information historian, I mean, we had kids working in fields and factories when they were very young, and we had serious concerns about, child life expectancy for children. Could they make it out of childhood? And today we get, worried about like, oh, what's Johnny playing in the basement right now, or what is he doing online? I'm not saying there aren't legitimate concerns online, and we'll talk about some of those today. But the reality is that we have to put things in some context. And sometimes when I hear people talking about child safety, I always ask them to stop, take a step back, and think about how far we've come, and to understand that a lot of the problems that we have today are really nowhere near the kind of problems that our parents and grandparents faced with us or previous generations. And the second reason that I think we should be optimistic and not be too freaked out is because we have a great arsenal of tools and technologies and methods that we'll talk a little bit more about and that we've been talking about at this entire summit that help parents know more about their kids than ever before, that allow parents to peer into the lives of their children, almost what some would say in a too intrusive of a way, to monitor almost on a minute-by-minute basis everything that's happening in their lives. And some of that I think is appropriate, and we can have a discussion about that. But the reality is that these tools are not available to my parents and yours. I used to get on a bike and ride through a cornfield about 20 acres away from my house and tell Mom I was just going to the backyard. She had no idea where I was. Well, my kids I monitor full-time via Looped and Google Latitude right now. If they're on their phones, I know exactly where they're at in this world. So, we can really have a better feel as parents about what our kids are doing because they are living their lives more like an open book, and there are costs and consequences and dangers to that, but there are also great benefits because they leave digital footprints for us to follow.
No, Adam, actually, you just said something that's worth going further into. Your book is 250 pages, correct?
Actually, 300 now in version
300.
4.
Version 4 is 300. And it's tools.
Tools and methods.
Methods.
Yes.
Why is there 300 pages of tools and methods if we shouldn't be freaking out?
Well,
so why
first
don't
of all,
tell us about what's out there first?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, I can't begin to, go through everything, but the reason it's that long is because there are so many different approaches that people and parents and families can take to dealing with child safety concerns. And parental control technologies is certainly one part of the story, a very important part of the story. But I like to look at parental control technologies in a framework of what I call basically speed bumps and sort of safety belts. I mean, there are approaches we can use at certain times in certain ways, but we can't expect them to do everything. We still need to talk to our kids about child safety, about online safety, and online interactions. The other reason my book is so long is because I spent a lot of time talking about non-technical parental control methods, good old-fashioned parenting. And before I even get to technical controls in my book, I have a whole section on what I call informal household media rules. And I divide these rules into basically a 5-part taxonomy of sort of where, when, how, and how much rules to say every parent, whether we know it or not, sets rules and limits on media consumption. And we always have.
In the physical world.
In the physical world, in the old world, my parents set them. My mom had the greatest carrot and stick rule with me of all time because she knew I was obsessed with Batman and Spider-Man comic books. If I did well in school and did my chores, I got my comic book fix. And if I didn't get that comic book at the pharmacy, that week. And the same worked for television for a while.
Now Adam is part of Comic Book Anonymous.
Now I am a comic book hero. I'm wearing a cape right now. But just tights. But the point is that there are a lot of tools and methods, and we need to come at this from an approach of